So just before we get into this, I'm just gonna say I'm gonna like make fun of this and stuff, but to be honest, most of these are pretty good public policy things. I think the response now that they've gotten going is actually pretty good. They've shut things down. They've taken pretty drastic measures pretty quickly. I mean, a lot of this stuff should have been done a while back, but at least they're doing it. And like once they started, they just went full balls to the wall. And I got to give some credit where credit's due to both the federal and provincial governments. I don't think they've really been doing that bad a job. And most of the public policy measures they're going to introduce here are probably sound and probably are the right thing to do. But I like to be contrarian, to a certain extent for the sake of being contrarian, just because I think it's like I can just sit here and go, oh, this is good, this is good, this is great, or I can sit here and be like cynical and pick it apart. And I kind of think the latter is more interesting. Um, Especially if I'm kind of taking an unpopular opinion, which I'm going to take an unpopular opinion in this video. Largely, like I said, just to kind of be contrarian. But overall, not a bad speech, not a bad response. Trudeau's doing a lot better on this than I thought he would. So credit where credit is due. I'm not too proud to admit when my enemies do something right. Hello, everybody. So Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has just announced a bunch of new measures to try to deal with the spread of the coronavirus. So I had actually a couple things to say about this. So let's just, we're going to watch this and I'm just going to provide some commentary. I think some of the things I say here, well, I always say that and it doesn't ever bother anyone, but it might piss some people off this time.
Vice President Pence and Secretary Pompeo. I just spoke to President Trump again this morning, and we have...
I'll say one thing, it's kind of shocking this isn't behind a paywall. Because normally, even if it's like some critical, like life-threatening thing, they still put it behind a paywall.
We've agreed that both Canada and the United States will temporarily restrict all non-essential travel across the Canada-US border. Je viens de parler au président Trump.
I just spoke to President Trump, and we agreed that Canada and the United States will temporarily restrict all non-essential...
Why would you dye your hair and not dye your beard? It looks really goofy.
Travel over the border.
I don't know, maybe I'm just
longer
mean.
Be permitted to cross the border for recreation and tourism. In both our countries, we're encouraging people to stay home. We're telling our citizens not to visit their neighbors if they don't absolutely have to. Well, this collaborative and reciprocal measure is an extension of that prudent approach. I want to be clear, though, that essential travel will continue. Our governments recognize that it is critical that we preserve supply chains between both countries. These supply chains ensure that food, fuel, and life-saving medicines reach people on both sides of the border.
Fair enough, they kind of have to do that.
Supply chains, including trucking, will not be affected by this new measure. Canadians and Americans cross the border every day to do essential work or for other urgent reasons. That will not be impacted. Ces jours-ci, tous les Canadiens ressentent les conséquences de la
COVID-19. To ensure your safety, we are recommending to everyone that they work from home, to avoid public spaces, to buy only what they need at the grocery store, and especially to be kind and empathetic towards those around you.
Whatever the hell that means.
We must all do our share to protect our health and those of the people around me.
COVID-19 is forcing us all to change our ways, and for many people, that's a huge adjustment. If you work in a restaurant, drive a cab, organize events, or freelance to pay your bills, working from home is not so simple. Just like if you work in the oil and gas sector or the tourism and seafood industries, you're looking at the uncertainty in the global economy and probably wondering not only how long this is going to last, but how long your savings are going to last.
If you work in any other industry, though, screw you. You're still getting a paycheck, and the costs associated with this, I guess, don't exist for you. and this is going to be a recurrent theme, and we're going to get into this, but this is something that kind of irritates me. Whenever the government announces, oh, we're going to do tax cuts, we're going to do all this nonsense, and it's only for like families and poor people, and it's like never for single people or like middle income. Like, I know we're supposed to be socially conservative, all for families, etc., but I do get tired of like none of these things ever helping me personally. And it's like it's my tax money and I don't really see a tangible benefit for it. And it's not even like the families are like my people. So it's like, oh, the money's going to support other people's families. So, yeah.
No matter who you are or what you do, this is a time where you should be focused on your health and that of your neighbors. Not whether you're going to lose your job. Not whether you're going to run out of money for things like groceries.
But only if you're a family or low income. Other people, money problems don't exist for them.
Medication. Last week, we announced a whole range of measures.
The people who just lost like large portions of their life savings when the stock market crashed and aren't sure if like they're going to be like screwed for the foreseeable future. Those people don't matter.
To protect jobs, small businesses, and the economy, from waiving the waiting period for employment insurance, sickness benefits to kick in, to increasing support for employers and businesses.
Okay, well, the sickness benefit thing is actually, that's actually something. I'll give them that.
We introduced special measures under the work sharing program to help employers who fall on hard times during COVID-19. And if your business faces a cash crunch, we will help you bridge to better times. We're working with our financial crown corporations through the Business Credit Availability Program to protect jobs and businesses with $10 billion in credit. Mais comme on l'a dit la semaine dernière,
and as we said
you don't get the money, vaguely defined businesses get the money.
last week, this is only the first step.
Lorsqu'on a annoncé ces
When
mesures,
we
on a
announced
dit
these
qu'on allait faire
measures, we
plus.
also said that we would
Et
be
c'est ce qui
doing more.
m'amène ici ce
And
matin.
that is what brings me here this
In
morning.
these extraordinary times, our government is taking extraordinary measures. The measures we're announcing today will provide up to $27 billion in direct support to Canadian workers and businesses, plus $55 billion to meet liquidity needs
We'll see if any of this money winds up like, we'll go through
of
this.
Canadian businesses and households through tax deferrals to help stabilize the economy.
Oh boy, tax deferrals.
Combined, this $82 billion in support represents more than 3% of Canada's GDP.
That sounds like it's going to be a
Let's
disaster.
start with people who don't qualify for employment insurance and don't have access to paid sick leave. Our government will introduce the Emergency Care Benefit, which will provide money every 2 weeks to workers who have to stay home. People will receive this benefit for 14 weeks for an amount comparable to what would be paid through EI. This applies to people who fall ill, people who've been placed in quarantine or have to self-isolate. It also applies to those who have to take care of a family member with COVID-19, but, as I said, fail to qualify for EI. If you lose your job and you do not qualify for EI, we will be introducing a COVID-19 emergency support benefit to help you. This will apply also to people who are self-employed and have to close shop because of the virus. Je veux commencer par ce qu'on va faire
I'd
pour
like
les
to
gens
begin by
qui ne sont
talking
pas
about what we're going to do for
admissibles à
people who are
l'assurance
not
emploi.
eligible to receive EI. Our government will introduce the
qui
emergency
donneront
care
de
benefit
l'argent
that
aux
will
travailleurs qui
provide
doivent rester
money
chez eux
to
à
workers that
cause
have
de
to
la
remain home
COVID-19
because of COVID-19 every 2 weeks.
Les gens recevront cette prestation
People
pour 14
will
semaines,
receive
le
this
montant
benefit for
comparable à
14
celui de
weeks, and it will be an
l'assurance
amount comparable to employment insurance. It is for people who fall ill, are placed in quarantine, or those who have to self-isolate. It also applies to people who have to look after a family member infected with COVID-19. But as I said, they are not eligible for EI. If you lose your job and are ineligible for employment insurance, we will be introducing the emergency support benefit to help you. That measure will also apply to self-employed workers that have to cease their activities because of illness.
Our government will take additional.
Maybe I should like pretend that this YouTube channel is going to get shut down and try to get some self-employment income out of it. Nah, that's not going to work.
To protect jobs. We will provide employers of small businesses with a temporary wage subsidy equal to 10% of salary paid to employees for a period of 3 months. This will encourage employers to keep staff on the payroll during these uncertain times.
It seems like nothing.
To protect jobs, our government will offer employers of small businesses a temporary wage subsidy equivalent to 10% of wages paid to their employees for a period of 3 months. This is a measure that will help employers to keep their workers on the payroll.
And I know a lot of people are wondering what COVID-19 means for their personal finances. For those who've filed their taxes and find out that they owe money, they will have until August 2020.
Maybe I'm a dick, but do people actually wind up owing money who aren't small business owners? I've never really heard of someone who winds up owing money but isn't a small business owner. I don't know, maybe that's just me.
To pay. If you
file your tax return and you understand that you have to pay, you will have until August 2020 to pay. We are also expecting more targeted assistance in the coming months for various groups of individuals who are particularly affected by the virus or...
Like, this is so generous. It's like, okay, so we're going to give, like, however many, like, a billion, a trillion, billion, gajillion dollars. So you don't have to pay your taxes for a couple more months. Couldn't you use that money to offset some of the taxes? No, the money has to go to companies. It has to go to business and vaguely defined poor people who don't pay taxes anyways, but you get to pay your taxes later on after you've been on like EI or some other thing that's basically at subsistence level for a couple months and gotten rid of your whatever.
Are in a vulnerable position. That brings me now to the next measure that we are announcing today, which affects parents.
With young kids are going to find the coming months especially difficult with school closures and additional childcare responsibilities. Parents already know how much the Canada Child Benefit helps with the costs of raising kids. To take some of that pressure off, our government will temporarily boost the CCB in the coming months. To help
parents come through this difficult period, our government will be temporarily boosting the Canada Child Benefit within the next few months.
With this plan, we're also going to do more for lower-income people.
Oh boy, families and lower-income people, that helps me so much.
Government will supplement the GST credit, a tax-free payment sent to low-income Canadians every few months to offset the consumer tax that they pay. Every adult who qualifies will receive up to $300 with $150 for every...
I mean, like, all this money is amazing. I don't know, maybe I'm just being like a dick and being really salty here. I just get tired of this because, like, when Doug Ford came to power, he's like, guys, I'm gonna like cut all your taxes, all this stuff is gonna happen, and then he didn't. And it was like, we're gonna cut taxes on poor people. But poor people don't really pay taxes. Yeah, but we're gonna cut it for them. We're not gonna cut it for middle income people. We're just gonna cut it for poor people.
Child.
To help people with modest or lower incomes, the government will increase the GST credit. In May, adults who are eligible will receive up to $300 and up to $100.
Modest income's also bullshit, because I don't know how much they realistically like adjust it based on where you live. Because like like 40 to 50K is barely subsistence, like in Toronto. So, yeah.
$150 per child.
While all Canadians are feeling the impacts of COVID-19, some groups are particularly vulnerable. For people who are still paying off their student loans, including young people and those who are starting a family, our government will put in place a 6-month interest-free moratorium on their Canada student loans.
Oh, wow, that's so generous. So you won't have to pay your loans while you're unable to work. I guess? I don't know. I hate this, like, we're going to give out, like, hundreds of billions of dollars to, like, companies, but, like, we're just going to delay your interest. You're going to have to pay it back. It's like what happened with the financial crisis, where it's like, okay, we're going to just print trillions of dollars. Should we use it to pay down, like, people's mortgages? Nah, we're just going to give it to the banks.
For people experiencing homelessness,
Oh, yeah.
we are
homeless
doubling
people.
the Reaching Home program,
It's amazing.
which provides funding to communities to help them address their local needs. For anyone fleeing domestic or gender-based violence, we will boost funding for shelters that provide sanctuary when self-isolating at home is simply not an option. And to support immediate needs in First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Nation communities, we are setting up a distinctions-based Indigenous Community Support Fund.
What the fuck does that mean?
This list is by no means exhaustive, but these are some of the things our government is doing to make sure that no matter where you live, what you do, or who you are, you will get the support you need during this time.
None of those things help me in any way. I guess maybe closing the border does a bit, but the rest of it's like, who cares?
In Canada, public health should never hinge on financial considerations. Aujourd'hui, on annonce
Today,
un plan
we are
pour
announcing
aider
a
les gens.
plan to help
On se
people.
concentre sur les
We're
besoins les plus
focusing
pressants,
on the most
mais comme je
pressing
le dis
needs,
depuis
but
le
as
début,
I've been saying
notre
from the
réponse
start,
évoluera
our
au fur et
response
à mesure
will
que la
evolve
situation
as the situation
évoluera.
also
Peu
evolves.
importe ce que l'avenir nous
Whatever
réserve, les
the future
Canadiens
holds,
peuvent compter sur
Canadians can rely on
nous. Notre
us.
travail,
Our
c'est
work
de vous appuyer.
is to help
C'est de
you.
vous donner un coup de pouce lorsque vous
It's
en
to
avez
help
le
you
plus
when you
besoin.
need it
Et
most.
c'est ce qu'on fait
And
avec
that's
les
exactly
mesures qu'on
what
a
we're
annoncées
doing
jusqu'à
with the
date.
measures we've
Et
announced
c'est
thus
ce qu'on va
far.
continuer
And that
à
is what
faire.
we will continue to do.
Now, I want to turn to additional measures for businesses as part of this
Oh boy, businesses get money.
economic plan. To help businesses navigate these uncertain economic times, Export Development Canada will provide support to Canadian companies affected by the global situation. For farmers and our primary food producers, we will boost Farm Credit Canada. And we know some sectors of our economy are more vulnerable to COVID-19 than others. That's why in the coming days, we'll be looking at ways in which we can support them all, including through instruments like the Canada account.
I don't know if like any of this is ever going to get paid off, but I guess like it doesn't. If you're like like an unpayable amount in debt, then doubling the unpayable amount doesn't really like matter, I guess.
L'annonce d'aujourd'hui donne suite aux mesures
Today's
que nous avons
announcement
déjà
follows
prises
up
pour
on the
protéger
measures
les
we've already
Canadiens,
taken to
leur
protect
santé
Canadians, to
et notre
protect their
économie.
health and our economy. Minister Morneau has also received from the Canadian banks a commitment to support businesses and people affected by COVID-19. I know he is in regular contact with them on this issue, as well as with business leaders and union leaders, as well as his international counterparts.
Is paying close attention to the economic impacts of decisions we make across the board to slow the spread of this virus. On Monday, I announced that Canada was closing its air borders to people who are not Canadian citizens or permanent residents.
Whoa! I thought it was one world, Justin. I thought it was like everybody can come here. You're saying that like there's problems with that? Wow.
With some exceptions. We also announced a range of other measures on travel. But travel restrictions will not apply to commerce or trade. We are working continuously to ensure the supply of important goods to Canada. Today, we've announced $27 billion in direct support to Canadian workers and businesses, plus $55 billion to meet liquidity needs of Canadian businesses and households to help stabilize the economy through tax deferrals. Economic measures will ensure that our economy rebounds after this. And while we are taking a significant step today to help families get through these challenging times, our government is prepared to do more. But whether we're talking about economic, travel, or health measures,
I kind of hate, like, it's just such low-tier pandering. Oh, we're here to help families. What about people who, I don't like, they're widows or something? Well, we can't help them, but families.
Collaboration and coordination remains essential. Our team is in constant communication with our colleagues in the provinces and territories, as well as Indigenous leaders and communities, to ensure that we have a coordinated, Canada-wide approach so we face this and recover from this together. We're also working with our international counterparts. Over the last number of days, I've spoken with leaders from around the world, including with fellow G7 leaders. Working together is how we'll get through this.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to be honest. By and large, from a public policy perspective, this is actually pretty good. I think most of these are probably what they should be doing. And this is like a pretty good package of stuff. I just thought I'd be contrarian for the sake of being contrarian on this one. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll talk to you guys.